Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Elder Scrolls Lore. Now it's been a while since we've had a theory video go on, and this video has been not a long-running debate, but it comes from a debate that occurred not too long ago with me and a few others, discussing the question of the Mede Dynasty status within the Third Empire. And now, we had this debate on the podcast. I believe it was me and Kuyo, and HB might have been in it. I don't even know if it got released, but nevertheless, it was over a year ago that we recorded it. But regardless of which, the argument can be made that since the Medes are a separate family and how the Septums are gone, insert shameless plug here. I actually have a video about how the Septums are not technically gone, but the Third Empire has undergone a drastic amount of changes and hence can no longer be the Third Empire. It is now the Mede Empire. Now, here I'm going to lay out a few arguments and state how it could be, and then I'm going to go through and state how it cannot be, and I'm going to leave it up to you, and I'm going to give you my opinion on it in the very end in one little conclusion, and you can state in the comments whether you're agreeing or disagreeing and how I'm a complete idiot, or how I raised some good points, or if I completely missed points. So, let's begin. As always, we gotta have a little background on this information, and so we all know that the Third Empire had lost a significant amount of power in the Fourth Era. Morrowind was released, Blackmarsh was independent, the Somerset Isles, Valenwood formed the new Altmerry Dominion, and then orchestrated coups in Ellisware, and then now have client kingdoms in said Ellisware. And so Skyrim is in a civil war, Hammerfell ended up becoming dependent, so essentially this all happened under the Mede Dynasty, and so they have significantly overseen a massive decrease in authority and power. Now, with Cyrodiil, High Rock, and half of Skyrim, territorially they have changed dramatically, and although militarily they're at full strength as of 201 of the Fourth Era, its reputation was soiled by the White Gold Concordat, and it suffered drastically politically and with its reputation. Now, with the Septums gone, the Medes reign over what is left, and with so much different does this make it the Mede Empire. So the first argument that can be made that it's no longer a part of the Third Empire is the fact that we have a new reigning family, hence, the title of this video. And since there's a new ruling dynasty, it significantly changes what the Third Empire represents. The Third Empire was Tiber Septim's empire. But as we know, the Third Empire was modeled after Rome, and Rome in fact had many ruling dynasties without it necessarily changing what the empire represented. We had the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the Flavian dynasty, the Nerva-Antoine dynasty. You get the point. They had a lot of dynasties, as you can see here. And while some dynasties simply faded away, most either fought in a civil war or politically maneuvered their way up, i.e. assassinating their rivals. And we see that when the last septum gave away, we get the Potente Akado, who comes in and rules and governs in its stead. And then we get a massive crisis known as the Oblivion Crisis that really devastated the Empire, which saw a massive weakening across the Empire, and this is where the territorial losses come in. When Akado was assassinated, this is what sparked the Interregnum, and essentially the Civil War begins. But nonetheless, the governing body never really changes. There wasn't a shift in structure of governing. It's not like, it became a dictatorship or ruling oligarchy or a democracy. It stayed an empire, and we eventually get an emperor coming back. The ruling family is the only thing that really shifted. The emperor remained in charge, the kingdoms of High Rock still submitted to imperial rule, and the High King of Skyrim still obeyed the emperor, and thus nothing really shifts in terms of political. The Elder Council remain unchanged. Taxes, military structure, and political, embassies or offices never really change. Thus, the government of the Third Empire never really changed. It remains the same. So, stating that because we have a new ruling family, changing this doesn't really fit, because the governing body doesn't really change at all. The Medes keep everything intact. But the territorial expanse, it no longer covers nearly any of the ground that the Septim dynasty had once ruled, so thus it must be somewhat different than whatever it is the Medes rule. So essentially this is also wrong. Just because a kingdom doesn't hold the same amount of territory doesn't necessarily make it any less different than what it was. You could take it during the rise of Tiber Septim during the Tiber Wars. Just because he conquered the Somerset Isles or Valenwood or Blackmarsh, it didn't necessarily make it any different from what it was when they just held High Rock or Skyrim or Hammerfell. It stays the same, its influence grows and shrinks as time goes on, and we see its influence still exist outside its own territory. Northern Ellisware and Northern Valenwood still hold a significant pro-imperial stance. Western Skyrim, even though Skyrim's in a civil war, and technically this part still belongs to the Empire, Western Skyrim still has a lot of pro-imperial influence, whereas East Skyrim no longer really does ever since the White Gold Concordat. So the territory explanation also never really works in this situation. But of course, the excuse I've heard before is, and this is not in the debate. I've had this debate with multiple people, so it's not just from the initial debate that happened between me and Kuya. The argument of how come when the Western Roman Empire fell, we called the eastern half the Byzantines. And that is just a modern addition in history. The Byzantines itself is used as a shift in terms of era. It was no longer the Roman era. It is now starting the medieval era. So we use the Byzantines to signify something different in terms of time. The Byzantines still called themselves Roman and identified themselves as Roman. The emperors still identified themselves the Emperor of Rome, and we see this during the Catholic Orthodox Schism. The rulers of Byzantium still refer to themselves as the Emperors of Rome, hence they have authority over the Pope. And vice versa, I guess that vice versa, it's also why Justinian tried to reconquer Rome and reunify the empire, which he almost did at one point. I have the maps up here too. So essentially, using that excuse also does not work, because even though we see a significant change in territory, the Byzantines refer to themselves as Roman. So essentially, we could still call this the Third Empire because they still identify themselves as the same empire than before. It's not like they identify themselves as the Fourth Empire or the Mede Empire. To them, they are still the empire, hence they're the Third Empire. I guess one of the most common arguments I've seen in this case is that the Medes are different because if you look back, the Riemann dynasty and the Septim dynasty are two separate empires. The Riemann dynasty is the second empire, and the Septim dynasty marks the third empire. Sorry. However, in this case, again, Tiber Septim wasn't trying to rebuild the Riemann Empire. He wasn't trying to associate himself with the Riemann Empire. He was creating his own separate independent empire, and it was completely different from that of whatever the Riemann Empire represented. So obviously it's taken influences from it, but nonetheless, Tiber Septim wasn't running on the idea that we're going to rebuild the Riemann Empire. He was building his own. So that one doesn't necessarily work in this case either. Nevertheless, it's not like we see a drastic shift in terms of religion or economics. We still see the same economy that are bustling. The East Empire Trading Company still trades across Tamriel, and you could argue the idea that since they no longer worship Talos, aka Tiber Septim, that they are now a different empire in itself. However, we do see shifts in Rome where they go from paganism to Christianity, and they still stayed Rome. So arguing that also doesn't really work. There's no big cultural shift in terms of how the empire sees themselves, so nonetheless they are still a part of this empire. We can use it to signify a change of era. Obviously the Mede era can be something used to describe that it's no longer what it was anymore, but nevertheless I thought it's something that was interesting to cover. So what do you guys think? Is there something I missed or didn't cover or skimmed over, or maybe I'm just being too one-sided on? Let me know. Obviously I think that the Mede Empire is the Third Empire. I think they're one and the same. I think it's just a shift in dynasties, but nonetheless I want to know what you guys think in the comments below or in the Discord chat, and I hope to see you all in next video. Peace. If you enjoyed, please like this video because it really lets me know you're enjoying this content. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. The links are right here for you to click on, and the Discord chat link is right here as well. And overall, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.